But you do hear that conversation where some people say, okay, we don't like Cruz, but at least he's predictable. We know where he is. We can plan a campaign around Cruz because we know his positions and we know he's going to be consistent. With Trump, it's sort of every day it changes. And how do you plan, if you're running for Senate, how do you plan your advertising strategy, your message strategy when your nominee may at any point pull the trapdoor out from under you? Let's focus on Rubio for a minute because it was a lousy day yesterday. There's no other way to spin it. He was in Puerto Rico, which he's hoping to get a win there today. 26 delegates, I think, 20-something delegates. So Rubio hopes at least to get another win, which would go with Minnesota. But the math is pretty bleak. And he did not pick up as many delegates yesterday as he had hoped. And yet he insists, listen to him here, he insists once we get to Florida, which is 9 days away, all will be fine.
We want to continue to increase our delegate total, and the map only gets friendlier for us after tonight and after Super Tuesday. We knew this would be the roughest period in the campaign, given the makeup of the electoral map.
The map gets better for him, Jeff, if he wins Florida. But before then, you've still got another Tuesday. You've got Mississippi and Michigan being the big contest there, and there's zero evidence that Rubio's going to do well in those.
Right, and that's the big challenge for him. Look, if he was coming into this period with a couple wins under his belt already, if he had done better in Iowa, New Hampshire, he could have sustained this sort of period of drought. But now it's very, very difficult for him. Sure, if he wins Florida, no doubt he has a second life here, but that is a big if at this point. It's 9 days is going to be an eternity, excuse me. It is going to be very hard for him. We saw that's a tortured argument he's making. I think my voice sounds as bad as his does. But that's a tortured argument he's making. The map will get better. It will get better, but I'm not sure that it will. I mean, I think that I'm watching a couple things in Florida. Is Jeb Bush going to endorse him? Would it matter if he did? There's a lot of resentment there from some Republicans that Rubio jumped in at all. But absentee ballots, as we've all been talking about, there are tens of thousands, maybe more, already cast for Jeb Bush. Those should go to Rubio. Certainly, you know, that's why he.
So even if Rubio was closing strong, there is the universe of people who can't vote for him because they've already voted.
When you look at the map, I mean, the Rubio campaign had evaluated this part of the map as being difficult for them, but what they did not calculate was Ted Cruz being in as strong of a position that he is right now. They thought that they would probably end up in second place in New Hampshire, but after that disastrous debate performance, he ended up, you know, in fifth place in New Hampshire and struggled afterwards, and Ted Cruz is still in a strong position. They thought he would start to go away and Ted Cruz supporters start to go towards Rubio, and then they could make the case that they are the Donald Trump alternative. But, of course, that hasn't happened. It's been much harder to make that argument, and if he loses Florida, he can only hope that maybe he pulls off a victory in North Carolina or Illinois on March 15th. But otherwise, it's hard to see how he'd continue that.
He's got to defend his home turf first. It is interesting. The conservative media conversation this morning are saying, you know, that Rubio's best hope now is to cut a deal with Cruz to be number two. Now, these things don't happen. It just doesn't. You know, candidates have egos. You might notice Cruz is opening Cruz is opening offices in Florida. Clearly making Cruz understands if you get to an open convention and the establishment has power and Rubio's still viable, they're going to turn to Marco Rubio before they turn to Ted Cruz. So he's looking to have. See if Cruz wants to get that's the right word. Thank you very much. I needed that word. So if the margins in Kentucky and Louisiana tell us that, you know, there's an opening and that maybe with a little bit more time Cruz could have gotten those states. If that's the case, the question is why. And so one of the questions is, did Rubio, like Chris Christie did to Rubio in New Hampshire, did Rubio actually help take Trump down, but Cruz is the beneficiary? You hear Cruz on the trail. Let's listen to him here. He's making the point to conservatives, to the point we just talked about, is that if you've been watching the last couple of weeks, Ted Cruz is trying to make the case, you have finally learned that Donald Trump cannot be trusted.
Last night was interesting because Donald has started running to the left, not in the primary, not in the general, but already in the primary. Did you notice how many times he said the word flexible? Yeah. We got to be flexible. He said, you got to be flexible on everything. Everything is up for negotiation.
I still think Cruz may yet regret being in the bromance for so long with Donald Trump, for waiting so long to get to this point. But Cruz seems to have found the place where he wants to be against Donald Trump.
Well, and this may be the argument that works with Trump, is that he is the consummate businessman who's just going to be transactional in this position, and that's what many conservatives are afraid of, and many, frankly, of his backers, if you explain to them, hey, this is sort of how Washington works already. That's not what they're looking for. So I think they may have found an attack that works here, and I do think the tag team was necessary, and it looks like Cruz is the one that's been benefiting. But I think getting him off his game, Rubio was quite good at it with the personal attacks, because it's almost the way you must go after him to get him off his game and then drill down on some specifics and make him wobble there.